Well, hello, everybody. My name's Dave, and I'm one of the pastors around here. And as most of you know, it has been a crazy week in southeast Wisconsin. Schools have been shut down. The U.S. postal system has been shut down. City offices have been shut down. Our very own Kenosha campus, we had pipes that froze. We had one pipe that burst. Our Racine campus, we had one of our heating units go out. The governor of our state declared us to be in a state of emergency. And on top of all of that, hell officially froze over this past week. It has been a very, very crazy week. And then to just complicate everything, in the history of our church, we have never, ever, ever canceled any of our services. But this week, just because it was so crazy, we canceled our Weekends on Wednesday service. And the problem with that is we record our talks at Weekends on Wednesday. And so when you don't have a lively crew to speak to, it's very difficult, but I've got good news for you. We actually had several of my friends come in to support me and to listen to the talk today, and so I just want to say to them, thank you to all of you. Okay, so 5 people. There are 5 people in this room right now, and I appreciate them showing up so that we could record and make sure we have the message available for our Sunday services. To everybody else, regardless of where you are, which campus, Racine, Kenosha, online, we just want to say welcome to you. It really is a great day to be here. And the reason why is because today what we're doing is we are launching a brand new series called Staying in Love. Staying in Love. And I'm just going to tell you right up front, we're not going to get into a whole lot of Bible verses today. And it doesn't mean we don't love Jesus. Just sometimes at the start of a series, I just take time to set it up and kind of let you know where we're headed. And so that is what we are doing today. But regardless of where your relationship is right now, and what status it is, whether you're single or married, or you're in a relationship with Netflix, or you've given up a long time ago, my goal for you, my hope for you in this series is that over the next 4 weeks, what you'll do is you'll receive practical tools that you can use in any of the key relationships in your life. All right, so tools that you can use in your parenting, tools that you can use with your coworkers, with friends that you have, and of course, if you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or you're married, that you would definitely be able to use it in there, whether it's in the area of communication, or learning how to treat someone in a better way, or learning how to apologize and to forgive, that you would see progress in a key relationship that you have in your life. Now, 2 years ago at this time, promotional materials started to be sent out, and different videos used to start to be sent out, advertising a once-in-a-lifetime experience called Fyre Festival. All right, if you haven't heard of this, it was a luxury music festival held on a tropical island in the Bahamas. And so as you can imagine, this festival was promoted by supermodels. It included big acts and celebrity chefs. And one of the unique things about the festival is it wasn't just promoted to the rich kids of Hollywood. All right, this was promoted to regular people like you and I because the tickets ranged anywhere from $500 to $250,000. Really, anybody who just wanted to escape the regular routine of life and have a little bit of fun for a few days. So, epic experience. 5,000 tickets were sold. And just was something everybody was looking forward to. Well, if you never have heard of Fyre Festival and don't have a clue what I'm talking about, let me at least show you an abbreviated version of one of their promotional clips. Check this out.
The actual experience exceeds all expectations and is something that's hard to put into words. All these things that may seem big and impossible are not. It gives people that type of energy, that type of power.
Now that looks like an amazing music festival. But if you know anything about it, it was a disaster. The entire event was incredibly disorganized. Blink-182, who was one of the headline bands, canceled at the last minute. And then as guests arrived, some of their bags were either stolen or mishandled. The luxury tents that everybody thought they were going to be sleeping in were really leftover tents from relief efforts that had been done around the country. There were dirt floors. Some of the mattresses were completely soaked. There wasn't enough lodging, and so as people were arriving, many of them were being turned away. There was no cell phone service. There was no internet, no running water. The amazing meals by these celebrity chefs turned out to be just ridiculous in the food quality. And just all around, this thing was complete chaos, right? Everybody's trying to figure out what is happening. And so on the morning of the day that this whole thing is supposed to start, it's canceled and everybody is sent home. Netflix actually has a documentary on it called Fyre, the greatest party that never happened. So think about this. Tons of people put time and money and energy into this event. Lots of people collaborating, lots of people working together, and the end result didn't even come close to living up to expectations. Now, this happens in our world all the time, whether it's with products, or with movies, or with vacations, or with experiences. Often, what happens is things are presented in a certain way that builds a lot of hype and creates a lot of anticipation, but it really sets people up for disappointment and disillusionment. And I don't know of an arena in which this happens in life more so than when it comes to our love life. Almost every article and book and movie and reality TV show that paints a picture of love, paints this picture of emotions and attraction and really endless cliches to create this idea that love is just one big fantasy world filled with feelings and a whole lot of passion. Which is why almost every single human being on this planet loves the idea of falling in love. Almost everybody wants to fall in love. And the good news is this: falling in love is easy. Falling in love requires a pulse, right? It takes about 10 seconds to fall in love. So some of you have fallen in love with someone you've never even met. You've seen them on TV, you've seen them in a movie, you're staring at the screen and you're like, yeah, I think I have fallen in love. In our country, there are 1,500 different organizations that you can pay money to, and you can give them a profile, and then what they'll do is they'll take your profile and they will connect it to the profile of someone else with a similar, interest. And who knows, if we have time this week, maybe we'll post all 1,500 on a resource page of our website, all right? Some of you might appreciate that. But here's the deal. You may not believe this. It has never been easier to fall in love. Because of the internet, because of social media, it has never been easier to connect with a broader and more diverse group of people than it is today. Falling in love is easy. But I would argue, and I know most of you would agree with me on this, staying in love is hard work. Staying in love is difficult. Staying in love is a challenge. Statistically, even if people choose to remain together for whatever reason, often they do not stay in love. They may live in the same home, but they're living isolated lives. Now, there are several reasons that staying in love is hard work. I want to look at 4 of them really briefly. Number 1 is this: it's rare to see a healthy relationship. So most of the relationships that we've seen in life just aren't great models. Most of the relationships that we've seen in life carry this attitude: do unto others as they deserve to be done unto. Or do unto others as they have done unto you. Do unto others as your mood dictates. Do unto others whatever you have to wear them down until they finally agree with you. Do unto others until one of you is ready to leave. And so quite honestly, most of the relationships that you and I have had in our life that have been modeled for us are relationships that they're existing or they're surviving, but they're not necessarily relationships in which a couple is deeply in love. And since we don't have a lot of great relationships that are modeled for us, staying in love is hard work. Now, another thing that makes it hard work is that most people lack something emotionally. Years ago, Dr. David Ferguson wrote a book about this called The Top 10 Relational Needs. And it really was this collaboration of work from different men and women. But the bottom line is he says that when you and I are growing up, there are certain things that we need from our parents in order to be mature and to be complete and to have a good chance at having a healthy relationship someday. All right, let's look at the things he wrote down. He says, growing up, we need to feel respected by our parents. We need to be encouraged, and our parents need to cheerlead us in areas of life. We need to feel comfort with our parents. We need to feel a sense of security. We need to be supported by them and feel that and sense that. We need to feel the acceptance and approval of them. We need to feel appreciated. We need their attention, and of course, we need affection from them. We need all of that in our life by our parents for a really great chance of having an amazing relationship someday. All right, so think about this. First of all, I want to say this. If you had all of these things from your parents, you need to sit down right now, you need to write them a thank you note, and you need to bring them out to dinner because that is very, very rare. So this is what you need growing up if the odds are going to work in your favor of having a relationship, a happily ever after type of relationship. But not only do you need it, your spouse needs to have felt all of these things growing up to have a good chance. Because what happens is if we do not feel these things growing up, what happens is we go into adulthood and we look for someone, our significant other, to bring us respect and to be our encourager and to bring us comfort and security and support. We look to the person we're in a relationship with to bring acceptance and approval and appreciation and attention and affection. So here's the deal. It is easy to fall in love if you're cute or if I think you're funny. It's easy for me to fall in love with you if you got a good job and I think you're going to bring security to the relationship. But once I've fallen in love, if I'm going to stay in love, then I need you to complete me in the areas where I have a deficit. That's one of the reasons it's hard work to stay in love. Now, another reason it's hard work to stay in love is because our culture makes it difficult. Our culture has a really low threshold of pain when it comes to relationships. I think you know this. And so if in the relationship it hurts too bad, or it's too inconvenient, or it's not comfortable, well then we have this idea, well something must be wrong. And the message we get every single day is if we're not happy in our current relationship, it's because we've married the wrong person. Right? We chose poorly. And so what we need to do is we need to re-choose, and we need to reboot, and we need to keep on looking until someday, eventually, we find our soulmate. And that seems like good advice, but here's the problem. If you talk to anybody who's happily married for 20 or 30 or more years, you talk to people who are deeply in love, here's what they're going to tell you. Oh, believe me, over the last 20 or 30 years, there were many times where I wondered if I had the right person. But then I decided that since the person, since I've already chosen a person, that they're going to be the right person for me, and we're going to work through our challenges and work through our difficulties. Now, I don't want to ignore this reality. Choosing the right person is important, but being the right person and becoming the right person is also part of it. Now, one more reason why staying in love is hard work, and that's because people change. Right? Nothing in our world is static. Nothing remains the same. Everything is in a constant state of change. Our bodies change, our beliefs change, our environments change, our abilities change. Our level of intelligence changes. Everything in our world is in a state of fluctuation. And so my wife and I, we were married, well, let me just say this. We started dating back in 1995. All right, that's us right there. Woohoo! About a year and a half later, we got married, and we've been married for 22 years. In the time that we've been married, we have lived in 6 different states. We've lived in 13 different houses. We've had 2 biological kids. We've adopted a kid. I've lost my brother. She lost her mother. Her dad got remarried. She found her birth mom. All of that in 22 years. The changes that we face in life, the loss of a job, sickness, depression, aging bodies, birth of a baby, death of a loved one, and so many other things end up bringing stress into our life or changes into our life. And over time, we change as individuals, and the person that we're in a relationship with changes. So think about this. When you say I do to somebody, you're not just simply saying I do to the person you've fallen in love with. You're saying I do to who that person becomes. You're saying I do to the future version of them. That's why staying in love is hard work, but it is not impossible. It is totally possible to stay in love for the long haul. But in order for that to happen, we need a mature understanding of love. So this is why the Apostle Paul, in a letter he writes in the first century, as he addresses the topic of love, starts wrapping up his thoughts on love by saying this: when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things. If our idea of love is locked into what we learned as a child, right, where everything's a fairy tale and everything is rooted in our feelings, well, yeah, it's going to be almost impossible to go the distance in love because feelings fade. And so for our love to go the distance and for our love to last a lifetime, we need to find a way to make love a verb. That's the big idea for this series. Make love a verb. Right? In other words, love is something we do. Love is kindness and it is patience. Love is apologizing and forgiving. Love is encouraging and it's helping. Love is gift-giving and it's affection. Love is something we do. The Apostle Paul in the first century says this about love. He says, do everything with love. Do everything with kindness. Do everything with patience. Do everything with gentleness and with humility. Do everything with a willingness to listen. Do everything with a heart of encouragement. Because that is the only way that you can take 2 separate individuals with 2 separate upbringings and 2 separate worldviews and 2 separate personalities and 2 separate ways of seeing life and 2 separate belief systems and 2 separate political views and take these 2 individuals and merge them together. I was thinking this past week of all the different areas of our life that you've got to take 2 different individuals with all these different philosophies and try to merge them together. And I just listed a portion of them. Check this out. You got to take 2 individuals with different views of parenting and merge them together. 2 different views of finances, bring them together. 2 different views on who does what around the house and bring them together. Intimacy, faith, priorities, expectations, communication, parents and in-laws. You've got to take these 2 different worlds and you've got to bring them together. And there is absolutely no way we'll ever get on the same page in those areas if we are not willing to compromise and discuss and wrestle through lots of emotions that we have and beliefs that we have. And so the Apostle Paul, in another letter he wrote in the first century, as he's talking about relationships, he specifically starts to address husbands and wives. And here's what he says to them: submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. I listen to you, you listen to me. I compromise some, you compromise some. I encourage you, you encourage me. I apologize when I'm wrong, you apologize when you're wrong. I carry some of the weight and responsibility, you carry some of the weight and responsibility. I'm kind to you, you're kind to me. The word for that is mutual submission. And the way that we stay in love for the long haul is through mutual submission. It's learning to listen to and appreciate and be influenced by our partner. And if we both do that, it's going to make a big difference. Now, I want to take a really, really, really sharp turn today and use the last few minutes of this talk to get us as individuals, and specifically to the couples, to get us moving in the right direction in an area where it's very challenging to be moving in the same direction. I wouldn't say right direction, I'd say same direction, right? Because there's so many different areas, like I mentioned earlier, where we're just kind of all over the map. So when it comes to couples, one of the most challenging areas to get on the same page is in the area of parenting. And I know this firsthand because Randy and I, we grew up in two very different worlds, and to bring our upbringings together is a really big challenge. Now, I'm going to share this on social media because we don't have time to get into it right now, but there are really 4 stages of parenting: discipline, training, coaching, and friendship years. And you see it broken down. I'm going to share this on social media because we don't have time to wrestle through that. What I want to do is take the final minutes in our talk, next 10 minutes, and I want us to listen in on a couple that I highly respect, Andy and Sandra Stanley, as they share some parenting thoughts and some parenting advice with us. And my hope is that this talk can be a focal point for you and your partner getting on the same page in an area where it's very challenging to be on the same page. Check this out.
From the very beginning, Andy established 2 commandments in our home for our kids. And I thought these were great commandments. The first one was, thou shalt not lie, and thou shalt honor your mother. And I particularly love that second one. And the way that looks like, just a little example of the way that looks in our home, is our boys have to stand at the dinner table until I'm seated. Every time, breakfast, lunch, dinner, wherever we are, they have to stand at the dinner table until I'm seated, and also until Allie is seated. Yeah. And usually I'm the last one to the table, but they have to stand there, and that's just a little picture of something that they do. It spills over into the way they speak to me, the way they show me respect, and the way they respect Allie. And nothing makes Andy madder than for any of our kids to be disrespectful to me.
And one of the reasons this was such a big deal is my dad taught me that the way I treat my mom will probably be reflected in the way that I treat my wife. So I learned that from them. And so when we had kids, I thought, I think that's true. So I wanted my sons to learn early to respect their mother, their sister, but just women in general. And then also, what this has done, hopefully, is I want the bar to be so high for my daughter that she is so accustomed to being respected and shown deference that if she's ever in an environment where she's not, that she will be unaccustomed to that will be an unusual thing, that would wave a red flag for her. So this has been a big, big deal, almost to a fault. Thou shalt honor thy mother, or thou shalt live somewhere elseth. It's kind of been our thing.
That's right, that's right. And men, if you teach your kids to do this, if you require your kids to show your wife respect and honor her, they probably are going to show that same respect and honor to you. If you don't model it, but you tell them to do it, again, you're not going to see that as a result with your wife. And a little side note for those of you guys, little information for you. If your wife feels dishonored and cherished in your family, you become the hero. If you are her champion and you're making your kids respect her and honor her that way, and she feels that, you're going to be the hero, and it is good to be the hero. Just saying.
Wow, yeah. Amen. Okay. Thou shalt not lie. Now, here's why we loaded up on this. This was such a big deal in our family for years and years and years. In fact, if you still ask my kids, I would say the worst thing you can do is tell a lie. The worst thing you can do is tell a lie. The worst thing you can do is tell a lie. Because lying breaks the relationship. We can get through any kind of disobedience. We can even navigate through, disrespecting mom. We can get through everything as long as everybody tells the truth. But if you lie, you break the relationship. So for years, even probably too early, if I said to my kids, okay, what's the worst thing you can do? Tell a lie. I just ingrained that in them. And then one day we're driving down the road, the boys in the back seat, too young to be in the front seat, so they were little. And Andrew, our oldest, who's the thinker, kind of focused one, he said, Dad, I think I know something that's worse than telling a lie. I said, well, no, Andrew, the worst thing you can do is tell a lie. No, I know something worse. I said, what? He said, worship the devil. I said, okay, that's probably worse than telling a lie. So then we had like 3 thou shalt nots. Thou shalt not worship the devil, thou shalt not lie, and thou shalt honor your mother. So anyway, but that was a big deal.
That's right. That's right. When Andrew was born, Andy and I were going on a trip somewhere soon after that, and we decided we needed some family goals. So we were going to be in the car for about 6 hours or so, and we decided we're going to come up with some family goals. And so we landed on 2 primary objectives for our family, 2 ideas that we really wanted to be true of our family once our parenting years and all of that were said and done. two primary objectives we wanted to be true of our family and of our kids, and neither one of them had anything to do with how well they behaved. They really didn't. The first one, and the one that Andy will talk a little bit more about too, is we wanted our kids to have enjoyable adult relationships with us once they're grown. We wanted them to want to come home. We wanted them, when they're in their college years and their single years and as they're starting their own families, we just want them to want to be with us. And this was something that Andy saw in my family. It was just kind of who we were as a family. My sister Allison, my brother Jack, and I, we just always wanted to be together with our mom and dad. And that Andy recognized that as something that, that we really would love to have as a result after our parenting years are over.
To some extent, it was in contrast to my family. They had such a family-centeredness, and I don't think they even recognized it. And so I don't know that Sandra would have ever set this as an objective. It just seemed natural, like every family's that way. I'm like, no, they're not all that way. But it's a good thing to the point where if the four of them were together and one of their family members was somewhere else for a while, her brother lived in California, when the four of them got together, they would actually call the fifth one and say, well, we're all together, where are you? And just taunt them. You know what we're eating? We're eating grandmama's cookies. You know what mama made? Just taunt them. Ha, 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 we're all together and you're not. There was just such a sense of family-centeredness. And so this is really huge. I would say, no idea how important this was 20 years ago. We established this because this one idea became a grid through which we have made many, many, many parenting decisions, because the goal wasn't for our kids to be good or obedient. Our goal was for them to want to be with us when they became an adult. And that was an adjustment to our sales, I think, in terms of overall parenting. The second one came more from my upbringing, and it was simply this. We wanted children who felt accountable to God and who understood that God had a plan for their life and sought God's will for their life. And this was a really, really big deal for me. Both of my parents from early on just instilled in my sister and me that God has a plan for you. You don't want to miss it. God has a plan for you. You don't want to miss it. Now, can you miss God's will? I don't know. That's probably a theological discussion, but that was sort of their terminology. God has a plan for you, and you don't want to miss it. And this was a huge, huge, huge factor in my decision-making all through childhood and all through those middle school and teenage years. In fact, one year at camp, we had a camp speaker when I was in high school who taught all of us to have a quiet time. And if you're not a church person, that's basically Christians get up in the morning and read their Bibles and have a little prayer and maybe write a few things down. And he suggested, his name was Dan suggested that we start a journal where we would write down our insights from reading the Bible and from our prayer time. So this is my first journal from when I was, I just started my senior year of high school, okay? This is when I started doing this. September the 29th, 1975. See, you always laugh. It's like, could you be that old? Yes. But I started high school when I was 12.
But I was just 6 or 7.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So now just to try to get yourself, when you think back to being a senior in high school, what's on your mind, and all that other stuff is in here as well. But my first journal entry, this is what a big deal this was. My first journal entry in my first journal as sort of launching my independent kind of Christian life was this. I need to tell my boy at a young age that God told me he was going to use him in a great way. This greatly influenced my life. Lord, I pray it will his. That my father specifically speaking into me to say, God has something for you, you don't want to miss it. God has something for you, God has something. I'm telling you, it was such a navigational point for me through all the complexities of high school. And by the time I was a senior, looking back, I realized that my sense of wanting to know God's will for my life had been so instrumental that I wrote myself a note as a senior in high school in case I ever got to be a parent and ever got to have sons. So that was such a big deal. And part of the extension of that was my parents really refused to make decisions for me. I think maybe in some cases too early, I would ask a question. They'd say, well, you pray about that and you decide. And I'm like, no, you just tell me. No, you pray about it and you decide. And sometimes my mom will be like, no, I know what God's going to tell him. We just need to tell him. And my dad was so good. He just would not make decisions for me. And so we've really tried to instill that into our kids and not just do everything for them. One kind of big incident, and this may not mean a lot to you, but when I was a junior in high school, Elton John came to the Omni. And some of you remember the Omni. You know you're old when you watch him build an arena and tear it down, okay? So I was around when they built it, and now it's gone. So Elton John came to the Omni, and the concert was going to be on a Sunday night. We were Baptists, so where were we on Sunday nights? Church, right? My dad was the pastor. And so this was a big deal. And I went to my parents and said, Elton John's coming to Omni. And I was such an Elton John fan, still am. I said, can I go? And my dad said to my mom's chagrin, will you just pray about it? And if you think God wants you to go to a rock concert on Sunday night and miss church, that's fine, you know. But he really did put that ball in my court. And so I prayed. I didn't hear anything. I took that as affirmation. And so, I bought the tickets, and me and 2 or 3 of my friends from church, and it was a big deal in our church. I'm like, oh, the pastor let us go to a rock concert on Sunday night. He missed church and all that stuff. And so my parents said they just prayed and prayed and prayed that I'd have a terrible time and see all the sin and corruption in that environment.
He came home wanting to be Elton John.
I wasn't going to say that. Yeah, but
You
so
wanna be a rock star.
I decided I was going to be a rock star. I found my calling in life, and people say, Andy, what are you going to do when you grow up? And my dad would put his hand over my mouth and say, he hadn't decided yet. I'm like, yeah, I have. Bill and John. So anyway, the point, even to a fault, and even when it was risky, and there are other illustrations, there was a sense of God has something for you. You need to learn to discern God's will. You need to learn to hear the voice of God. And so you decide. And so that was huge. So this is something we've really tried to instill in our kids, a sense of accountability to God for their personal lives.
I love that. Because I know for Randy and I, one of the biggest tensions in our relationship is over the area of parenting. Because again, we came from different families. And I love how Andy and Sandra talk about having a focal point, this whole idea of, man, we just want to have relationships with our adult children, and we want for our children to feel accountable to God and seek his will for their life. So I hope that in your marriage and in your parenting relationships, that you can find a focal point that takes a little bit of the tension off of the relationship you're in with your significant other, and that you will find that, yes, it may be easy to fall in love and difficult to stay in love and a challenge to stay in love, but it's possible if we will just work through the difficulties and the challenges that come in a relationship and find a way to be mutually submissive to one another. Let me pray for you. Our Heavenly Father, I thank you for all the relationships represented at Great Lakes Church. As we leave here in a few moments, I pray give us the wisdom to know what to do and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.